My name's Garth Holden, for those that don't know. I've been at SA Gamer, currently at SA Gamer and SA Techie, been at PC format, lazy gamer, gear. I've been around in the games journalism industry, and I wanted to come and chat to you guys about a topic that I thought I was quite qualified for, and that's failure. And how kind of you need to cope with it, because it will happen if it hasn't already. So the best way I thought to do this all was to give a bit of history into how I'm overqualified in failure by starting at the beginning, which is, I'm going to give my age away here, 2002, matric. I got extremely sick. Doctors didn't know what was wrong with me. 3 courses of antibiotics later, nothing was happening. Doctors took me in for x-rays and scans, and they found a mass in my lungs. And when you're 16, a doctor telling you have a mass in your lungs and that your blood checks say that you have no antibodies, basically telling you have AIDS, things kind of like go whack out of your head. So it was like, okay, I might have cancer and I might have AIDS, don't know what's going on, you know, you kind of think life is ending. And it wasn't, thankfully. I don't have AIDS, I don't have cancer somehow. But what it did do is it stole a lot of things away from me that I was really enjoying. I was a pretty good swimmer. I was doing my life-saving certificate at the time. And I was singing for a youth choir. And it was kind of like the only thing getting me through school was these 2 activities. And when you lose your lungs, you kind of can't sing or keep a deep breath for the life-saving courses and what have you. So it was an interesting time. I spent a lot of time bedridden, and I spent a lot of time with Final Fantasy X. I'm a big JRPG fan. I actually had one of my mother's mates was going over to England. It was back in the days when games didn't get released immediately here. And when I got back from the hospital, the game was waiting for me. And basically I would pass out for long periods of time on extreme medication with the game's music playing. And I always try to explain to people that games can create this kind of healing space for people, and that as developers you guys need to be aware that your game might be like the crutch that someone is using, and something like that is extremely powerful. Moving on from that, I went to varsity. Like a crazy person, I didn't take a break here because my parents didn't believe in it, and they thought that me getting up on my feet straight away was a good idea. I didn't. I partied, like a lot of people do. And that's kind of a failure because it's a thing about discipline. You suddenly you have to look out for yourself, and there's no one looking after your back behind you and saying, hey, you know, you should be doing your work, you should be doing that. And it was also a bit of a problem because I went and studied computer science, and it just wasn't really working for me. I started looking at like a game design course, but it was like a very early stage thing. It wasn't really a game design course, it was more an excuse to get more people into programming and give you a little bit of art on the side. Eventually, all the partying and what have you got the best of me. My parents called me home. I was a very angry person, as most people would imagine. And funnily enough, when I was in high school, my English teacher told me, you're going to do something with languages. And I told her, she's nuts. I'm going to be a computers. You know, I love computers, I love games, that's all I want to do. And I came home all these years later and I started studying communication science and basically doing things with languages. I eventually moved up here to Joburg. I met a girl and she decided to import from Newcastle. And what happened is I was using another job as a platform, as a stepping stone. And a lot of people always tell you that, you know, get a foot in the door and you can move up in the organization or you can find another place. The problem that happens there is if you fail to move on. So what happened there is I ended up getting stuck there. The people I worked with were really terrible. It took like 3 years before I stopped. After leaving, getting a sick feeling in my stomach thinking about them. And basically they created this little box for me that it made me feel like this was the only thing I was ever going to do and all I could do for my whole life. And it was around that time when I was so angry at work, I actually started writing for Lazy Gamer. I was bored out of my mind at work. I was unhappy and you weren't allowed to leave until a certain time, so I just started writing, and it helped because I was in a community newspaper and they pay badly, like famously badly. I won't mention the company name right now, being recorded and everything, but it was a huge thing because I was made to feel by myself and by others that this was the end point for me. I wasn't going to go any further. And it's a very difficult view to break. And the reason it broke wasn't because I was like strong enough to go, hey, I'm going to get out of this. It was when my body decided like, well, this is it, over kind of thing. And I ended up having a nervous breakdown. And I was forced by doctors to like stay at home, no work. I ended up leaving the job and just never went back. There were like threats of legal stuff happening. A lot of it was happening in the background, and I have like a few months that I just kind of, I know stuff happened, but you know, it wasn't my problem at that point. And it's very hectic, and the thing is, sometimes you have to listen to your body and you listen to your friends when they tell you, hey, you're really not happy with what you're doing. Are you sure you want to be there? Instead of just saying like, yes, but I should have maybe just looked somewhere else, or started looking harder, or maybe just quit and like taken a leap of faith. I did take a leap of faith later, and I went to PC format, which felt like a really great thing. I mean, here's this boy from Northern Natal doing super amazing things. Editor of PC format, I'm going to E3, I'm traveling around the world seeing tech and whatever. Something wasn't right. I knew that the magazine industry was in a good place, right? We've all seen how technology is what we do. You're online all the time, you're reading online, you're not reading a magazine or a newspaper or what have you. And basically they needed someone to keep the project running for as long as they had advertising money coming out. And as soon as those contracts ended, they were like, okay, well, there's nothing more. This is the end of it, goodbye. And because I hadn't researched enough, and I hadn't been able to find out like how people could create a situation that they can use you so badly as a large company, I ended up falling hard, and it was very difficult for me to not see it as a personal failure. For a long time I held it on my head that I was the captain of the ship and it went down. To try to give you an idea of it, because it was an international license thing and the rand dollar and what have you, the magazine needed to make $500,000 a month to break even, basically, which it couldn't do by just selling copies. And they told me I was coming in to sell copies. Basically, it needed like 20 pages of efforts a month just to be able to sustain what I was doing. And the reason it cost that much is because the way they structured their company, the more pages you have, the more you pay for everyone else in the company. It's a very weird system, but because I didn't know that, and knowing it now, it's like, okay, very, crazy place to be, and there are companies that can happen in, so it's a very real thing to worry about, like when you start dealing with the companies, what kind of contract and stuff you have in place. So the reason I wanted to tell you this kind of story is basically wherever you go in life you might have to go the long way around, and that's kind of okay. A lot of people will tell you have to do things as soon as you leave varsity, or as soon as you leave high school even, or that like holidays are bad, breaks are bad, or starting a project and then realizing it's not working for you or for anyone involved. Sometimes you have to just have the balls to say, okay, I'm done with this. I learned a bit, or I learned how terrible people are, or whatever. It's still learning from something, and you're going to move on. The other thing was the idea of going from peak to peak. So if you have a goal that you've just accomplished, start looking for the next one. Because the worst thing you can do is suddenly, it's like playing World of Warcraft and you hit the last quest in your quest log and your quest log is empty. Don't let that happen in your life. Unless you're planning like a holiday, it's a really bad idea, because you need something that makes you feel like I'm working towards this because I'm going to succeed, and you might end up falling into a loop where you feel like you're failing, even though you're supposed to be possibly the most successful outpoint in your life. But if you leave it like that without thinking of your next project, your next ideal, it's going to be a huge problem. And then I also just wanted to say how life is kind of unexpected. It sounds really cliche, but when I was in high school, I don't think I was going to be a journalist. I didn't see, I knew I wanted to be into computers. I didn't realize I'd be writing about them instead of, programming them, building them, that kind of thing. But it's really cool. I love what I do. Where I am now, we actually have our own business, my one friend and I. We left Panorama and we do essay game and essay techie. That's full-time work. And a lot of people are still like, don't you want to do freelance for us? And no, well, I have a job, guys. I'm not just sitting at home eating ramen. Well, sometimes I just sit at home and eat ramen because food's expensive and ramen's quick to make. And I kind of found that at the end, if I look back, I can see a lot of failure. It feels like a lot of things I've tried have just stuffed up. But I've also learned a lot about myself, about how far a person can push themselves before they start breaking, about what companies can do to you if you don't have proper contracts in place. And just also about what I wanted in life. I didn't want a corporate job that I had to wear a suit and sit in 3 hours of traffic every day. So now I work at home. I didn't want to work somewhere where they told me that you're not allowed to have a beard, because those places exist. And they make you shave, and you're like, well, okay, can you wear a different blouse then or something? Because you also look stupid. But looking back at now, it's easy to joke, but when it happens to you, you feel like there's no way forward. And that's the thing, is when you do fail, you can fail forward. Normally it's all about just dealing with the fact that you now have learned something, and it's going to allow you to either try again or try something else. Thomas Edison is pretty good with it. He was a huge inventor. He's a big fan in the maker space at the moment with Intel and them, because he filed 1,000 patents. But when you think about Edison, most people will think of one thing that he made, maybe 3 if you really into tech and studying that kind of thing. And that's because you can have a great idea and it just might not work right now, or it won't work with the resources you have. You could create something and not leave a platform for it. Henry Ford did a perfect example of that. Is he built a car in a garden shed, and the door wasn't big enough for the car when he was finished. So he had to break his whole shed to get his car out, much to the grief of his wife. But these are the kind of things that happen. You don't plan, you don't think about it when you're going for it. And yes, when you tell someone, they're going to say, "Wow, you're stupid, that was a failure," or "How could you have not thought of that?" And it's okay. Not everyone works the same way, not everyone sees the same pitfalls. It's all about learning from your experiences, and sometimes about sharing them with others. When you hit a point where you don't know what you're going to do next, If you do a project and it completely fails, say you make a game and it scores super terribly, it gets slated across the board, learn from it, try something else. Don't let it sit on top of you like, that's the end of your career, because it's not. We always see these things as like, oh, that was a critical disaster and it means the end of everything, and it generally isn't. And also, if you are feeling in a position where you're failing or your body's not handling it or whatever, tell people. You'd be surprised how much of a healthy, happy aura you can give out when you're actually collapsing and everything's falling apart around you, and people walk up to you and say hey, I dig you because you got everything together, and you're dude, if only you knew. And you'd be surprised, it happens still to me to this day. People I wish I was like you because you have everything sorted out and you know what you're doing. And I'm no, come, let's sit, tell me your problems, I'll tell you mine, and then you can choose. You want to leave here with my problems or with your problems? And the only way you're going to get through that is if you ask for help. Don't leave it to a position where you can't ask for help or it's too late. Because things like breakdowns or what have you, they are not cool. And yeah, it's something to live through, and it's terrible because the media kind of paints them in this light of oh, they're so easy, don't worry, it's over soon. Doesn't work that way. So any questions?